Well, hey there. Keeper is a game about a lighthouse that is, first of all, weird, but also really weird, which also makes it pretty damn charming. Double Fine is all about making experiences at this point. They were never in it to make the most badass or money printing type of game. They just want to make something new, and you could have a blast while playing it while feeling something along the way. And as far as the review goes for this, it will be a bit shorter and sweet, and it will have spoilers to warn you ahead of time. If you don't want them, totally cool. Come back to this when you are ready or you have seen Keeper to its conclusion. Otherwise, let's get started. Keeper's story is told a bit through gameplay, but mostly by experience. We get to see very close up this desolate land where other creatures that look similar to our own are scattered about, broken and mangled. They're dead, but also maybe a previous civilization of some kind that left writing on the walls. Quite literally, cities remain after a destructive force tore down, or wildlife now fill every nook and cranny of this world. It is post-apocalyptic in nature, but most areas that you visit have moments of light themes, yet always an undertone of darkness. Like something isn't quite right and things are not going great in this world, but we do have a weird little bird dragon guy with us that sometimes helps us solve some puzzles and such. But part of the way through the story, we do lose this little guy. Not that he's dead or anything, he's just not with us. But then we get him back later on, and we also get an egg that of course turns into a little baby of its own down the road. Near the end of Keeper, both of these little guys get reunited with a massive group of the same creatures, who all seem to know that they need to fly off together in this giant flock, leaving us alone, which is a little bit of a bittersweet moment. And the story has its ups and downs and steady flow, but it constantly keeps you on your toes. The ending and what exactly the story is supposed to mean, I don't know. It's up to your interpretation, honestly, because I have no fucking clue, to be honest with you. We make it to the top of this mountain, we set our dragon bird dude free with his friends and maybe family, and then we become the mountain, I guess, which in turn then becomes a giant lighthouse with an eyeball at the peak of it because of reasons. I have no clue, but I liked it. It was pretty interesting. Sometimes things don't need to make sense. It was interesting, fun, and with no dialogue, set in a weird and wacky ass world. And I felt that this story portion kind of fit the world overall. You don't always have to give me something more specific or grounded. Just give me something to think on, something to ponder in my free time after the game ended. And that's where Keeper kind of sits, with something to reflect on, almost like Journey. It's not always about the destination, it's sometimes about how you get there. Getting into this next part, I want to talk about music and audio, and not a ton to say here other than it was done really well. The motifs of dark were present in an unsettling area such as the graveyard, or the last bit leading up to the mountain before you hit the peak. The lighter moments when you're bouncing into pink puffy clouds or solving some light puzzles in a town. The music didn't impress me a ton, but I also never got turned away by any of it. I do wish it was sometimes a little bit better, but sometimes you gotta deal with the hand that you're dealt, and honestly, I was mostly focused on the world and the puzzles for the majority of the time, where the music and audio came as secondary. Although the different forms that our main character takes all sound unique as well, whether you're a lighthouse or a spinning wheel or maybe a boat. Whatever it is, you'll really hear the crunch under your feet or the waves splashing around on the shore. Along with each animal that you kinda interact with sounding great, the ambient sounds and how that gives the world texture through it is what's most impressive with the audio design. Again, there's no voice acting to critique here, so we will move on. Graphics, on the other hand, boy, does this have a stark art direction, so you can critique it if you'd like, and I'm gonna try to here. So I tried to play the game on max settings because it didn't seem that demanding, but boy was I fucking wrong. I had to turn it down a little bit because it started crashing every time I hit start. It would launch the game perfectly fine, but as soon as I would begin that first cutscene at the very beginning of the game, within a few seconds it would just hard crash. So be mindful of that, but even on medium settings or so, the game is extremely beautiful and highly detailed. I've said it before and I will say it again. I prefer a beautiful art style. Details do matter, but if they come at a cost of artistic direction, then I do not want it. Luckily with Keeper, we get both. It's not anything close to like photorealism. Instead, it reminds me of some of those older, darker movies from the 80s, like The Dark Crystal or maybe Labyrinth with David Bowie, but both of those movies have darker themes, weird creatures and moments, yet they're scary and magical all at the same time. I felt those thoughts the same here when I was playing The Keeper, and it might just be me, but I love the way that this game just made me feel in the moment. The world it kept me in, and just kind of slowly moving throughout it, completing puzzles and the like throughout my adventure, slowly being morphed into different things, allowing me to complete new puzzles in unique ways. Those puzzles present themselves in a fun and exciting way. Sometimes you're in a grotesque looking interior or a vibrant, colorful exterior. You'll get a taste of both and you'll enjoy it the entire time because the game is just so pretty. But speaking of puzzles, the gameplay, while pretty straightforward, continued to mix and change things up over time. I went into this knowing that it was going to be a little bit of a puzzle-based game. You're mostly just walking forward and resolving whatever puzzle lies in front of you, sometimes with some minimal backtracking, but usually you're maintaining a forward momentum as you complete some smaller puzzles or a larger area full of many of them. I don't think that any of them were really that challenging though. Some were a bit vague and confusing at first, but you can sort of stumble your way through them. My favorites were the little wheel where you gain speed and almost act like a Hot Wheel on a little racetrack, just going as quickly as possible. The other was with a time morphing mechanic where you have your little bird dude turn into an egg by going back in time, but then going far forward in time, he turns into a fucking ghost, which is funny. It had me cracking up with how clever it was, but as I mentioned before, you yourself as the lighthouse can turn into different shapes and sizes, from the initial lighthouse that you are to a boat, then to a spinning wheel, and then to a weird amalgamation of a boat fish dragon lighthouse thing. No matter what you are though, the puzzles as you move through the zones are dynamic with whichever form you're currently taking, leaving a distinct feeling to certain zones and acts of the game. I got very slightly bored by the end of it though, because I think it was mostly, there were no really hidden objectives or things that I could see or learn for the most part outside of that main vital path. There were very tiny off the beaten path options here, but they're so minimal and they don't really do much to expand gameplay or story or anything. I only did a few of these on accident a few times, and I never really sought them out directly because there just wasn't any point, it felt like. But Keeper has you going forward and solving puzzles. That's really the vibe that we have here, and if you enjoy that, then this game is for you. And as we're nearing the end of this review, I just want to give some quick final thoughts. Keeper is $30, which is for me slightly on the higher side of an experience like this. Sword of the Sea is the same price, and I would have to say to go for this one over that one if you had to pick from the two. Another very similar one is Herdling, which is $25, and I like that these games are on the cheaper end of things. Sometimes it's a bit of a toss-up where some are better than others, but this one is cutting it a little bit close where I would say $30 is actually worth it maybe. Keeper took me about 5 hours to complete it, and this was with me exploring a bit in some of those slightly open areas just to see what was around each corner, but on the other hand, Sword of the Sea is cutting it even closer to not being worth the cost, where I almost wouldn't even recommend it at that price, and then Herdling I for sure will not recommend at $25, but I just want to point out a few games that are similar in scope and cost compared to the Keeper. These smaller experiences that only take maybe an afternoon or maybe a few hours before your lunch and a few hours after, and bam, you're done. Is that worth the time and money? I think that's truly up to your idea of cost versus experience. Sometimes I'm willing to pay a premium for a great experience, regardless of the length, but then sometimes I want more for my money. When it comes to games, I'm a bit torn in this thought, but what I do know is I can recommend Keeper to just about anyone. It's fun, it has a profound meaning that you can glean from its overall themes, and in the end, it's just a good game. It sets out and does what it wants to accomplish, and it's gorgeous along the way. Well, that's going to be the end of this video. I know I'm doing a handful of smaller games here and there, and I kind of want to keep up this pattern of doing some smaller ones, with maybe a little bit of a quicker review on it after playing a few hours and completing it, then maybe leave one bigger game here and there between those smaller ones. Those videos just take up so much more time to piece together and edit. The footage also takes up so much more space. I mean, Ghost of Yote is like 2 terabytes on my hard drive right now. And yes, I am still working on that one, but anywho, I hope you enjoyed. As always, do that dumb YouTube stuff, and I will see you next time.